welcome to another episode of LNTV. I'm Sarah Cowgill, and joining me today is the one and only Scott D. Cosenza. Scott is here to talk about the Philadelphia District Attorney's race and what that means for the state and eventually, the nation. Scott, thanks for taking the time to fill in our viewers and myself about the high stakes associated with this election.
Hi, Sarah.
So what's happened in the city of brotherly love?
Well, they just finished a primary battle for district attorney. The incumbent was the first of the country's big city Soros DAs, which is to say he's a very progressive Democrat. And we saw a wave of those across the country in recent years, and he was one of the first to take office. So it was a big question as to whether or not you'd be able to keep power after implementing the changes that he did.
Okay, so are you telling me? Okay, it was the DA, current sitting incumbent DA is Larry Krasner. So are you and his Democratic opponent was, Carlos Vega, right?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, now they're both Democrats. Are they that polar opposites on the political Democrat spectrum?
Well, nobody fights like brothers, they say, right? So the closer that you get to the fewer distinguishing characteristics, the more vicious the fighting becomes. But I don't think that that's the case here. I think there is a pretty big distinguishing characteristic between the two. You have to remember in Philadelphia, because it is 100% Democrat rule, I think it's 7-1 or 2, the registration advantage for Democrats over Republicans in the city. There's no competition effectively from Republicans for office. So all the difference is at the primary level. And there is genuine competition, I think, at the primary level. And that is what we saw between Vega and Krasner. Vega represents the conservative, lock them up for sort of philosophy. And Krasner is more of the sort of hippie type of retributive justice or sort of holistic justice that generally yields shorter sentences and less charging than the other style.
So Scott, tell me, what has Krasner done since he's been in office? What are his policies?
He's implemented a sea change in policy in the DA's office in Philadelphia through his use of his discretion to prosecute and to ask for certain sentences. He's effectively legalized marijuana, small amounts of cocaine and other drugs, effectively decriminalized prostitution. He won't bring a sex case. And they've also totally redone the way they do post-conviction supervision. So probation and parole has changed radically. The state of Pennsylvania and the city itself were known for very long supervision times. So for somebody who maybe, got in trouble, got a misdemeanor conviction on something, they would be supervised for many years. Or somebody who spent a couple years in prison, they might be supervised for double the time they were in prison while they're out of prison. And he eliminated almost all of that. And then the third thing that he did, and I think this is what animated his opponents perhaps the most, is that he tore after the police and established a sort of no call list or no confidence list, whereby by effectively announcing that those police officers' credibility was so questionable that the DA could not in good conscience ever call them to testify in court on behalf of the state, that they were effectively, their careers were ruined.
That's radical. That's crazy radical. That's a no-fly list. That's a, doxing of somebody in their career. That's what
Carlos Vega said, and that's what his proponents argue, that's exactly right. The counter to that, what the Krasner would say, I think, and his proponents would say, is that Philadelphia has for so long refused to do the hard work of weeding out problem police officers or taking complaints against the police seriously, that the pendulum had gone full swing in the other direction, and now it's coming back. I tend to see that as the truth. I have spent many I was going to say
you have a history
days,
in Philadelphia.
months, years, weeks. I don't know what the right time is, but in Philadelphia, I went to a Philadelphia area law school. I'm familiar with the community, and I've been pulled over and harassed by the Philadelphia Police Department before without legal cause. And I can tell you that if, a highly educated white guy who's not committing a felony can feel intimidated by the police officers who don't seem to feel the pinch of any kind of, or at least did it. That was my perspective as somebody who was harassed by the police on multiple occasions, is that they were essentially the cowboys and had nobody seeing that they followed rules in the law. And I think that feeling was pervasive enough to drive him not only into office, but to re-election.
So what we're seeing, maybe what we're seeing is an absolute redo of policing. If he's going to take, if Krasner is going to, basically swing that pendulum, as you said, way back to the other side, maybe that's perhaps where it should have been all these years ago, and then worked its way towards the middle again. Is that what's going on with the Vega versus Krasner?
The tough spot for Philadelphians, Sarah, is that that Krasner's policies may have increased violence significantly in the city. Okay. It's not just the laying out of the sort of libertarianish views I discussed earlier. There's also some other components where, and I encourage everybody to watch the series called Philly DA, which is available on PBS. It's an amazing documentary style access film or series where they have access to, like, Krasner basically let the cameras in his decision-making meetings. And in one of them, we learned that all the section chiefs that were sort of how a DA's office works usually is, the DA doesn't try cases or manage even cases. They set policy and deal with other matters, and they're politicians. It's the section chiefs that do the kind of nitty gritty work of managing and shepherding cases and sort of implementing that policy, in the courtrooms of the city. And there's this one instance where this woman says that how could she tell a victim who was robbed that it wasn't a robbery, it was just a theft with violence. And I think that lays out how some of these policies are clearly going right in the face of the state law, which is in place to protect the victims of crime and to punish those who perpetrate crime. And I think it's easy to say, especially for somebody like me who favors marijuana legalization, that they don't necessarily care about a DA enforcing or not enforcing marijuana law and may favor that. But when it comes to laws that have to do with violence against us and our neighbors, that's a harder pill to swallow.
So it's a little bit of a double-edged sword there in Philadelphia. Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
Well, okay, going forward, now this was just the primary, so what's going to happen?
It's a foregone conclusion that he will win the general election.
It's just done.
Yeah.
And so he gets to continue.
If
these policies.
If a video comes out where he hurts a puppy or something like that, then maybe not. But other than something totally out of the blue, he'll win. He's a Democrat running for election in Philadelphia. That's what happens.
Wow. Well, Scott, I got to thank you for taking the time to explain it to me and explain it to our viewers. What's going on in Philadelphia and where we're at in a progressive-oriented Democratic Party America. It's fascinating to see what is happening, and I look forward to talking to you again.
I'll be looking to see if this pattern continues with the other places where Soros DAs are in office. One thing that's a little bit of a wrinkle with this election, Sarah, is that it's an off-year election. So There were some ballot initiatives or referendum on this ballot, but other than that, this was basically the only race. So it was sort of a contest between the passionate on both sides rather than the sort of general electoral populace.
Well, we're heading into 2022.
Yeah.
That could be your bellwether. Thanks, Scott. It's always a pleasure having you on board and to help educate the rest of us who aren't keeping track of the tiny little details that make the political process so exciting for most of us. That's it for this edition of LNTV. Remember to hit Liberty Nation News for original articles, the Uprising and Rabbit Hole podcast, and our signature television program, The Conservative 5. Just go to libertynation.com on your browser or hit Rumble, YouTube. Check out our Liberty Nation News Roku channel. I'm Sarah Cowgill. Thanks for watching. This program is a production of libertynation.com, conservative news where truth matters.
Who are we? We are Americans that believe in liberty. We are a project of the nonprofit One Generation Away. We are patriots who apply the founding principles to the issues of today.
And they keep moving the goalposts on us.
We are educators and commentators who love America and the Constitution. Who are we? We are Liberty Nation.